Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, and I've got a new sponsor today. I mean, I'm happy with my existing sponsorships, but I'm always on the lookout for something that I can happily and honestly recommend to you, and that can be very, very tricky. I mean, yeah, you could always just take the Raid Shadow Legends money and run, but I think people can tell when the person doing the recommendations has no real vested interest in the thing that they're recommending. Which is why this week I am very happy to recommend Incogni to you. What the hell's Incogni? It's a data removal service. You grant them the right to act on your behalf, and they take an axe and go to work on all of the data brokers and demand that they remove all of your personal information from their databases. And the first 100 people to take advantage of the link below, or just go to incogni.com/jingles and use code JINGLES, will get 20% off an Incogni subscription. I was quite intrigued by this service because I'm sure regular viewers of this video series will know that I am extraordinarily careful about who I give my personal information away to. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not a friend, a member of my family, my doctor or my bank, you simply do not need my email address or my phone number. You may recall me telling the story of how I once tried to do something as simple as buying a shirt, and I wasn't able to do it unless I was prepared to hand over my telephone number and email address when making the purchase, and I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure the process of buying a shirt does not require the use of an email address or a phone number, so you can keep your shirt and I'll keep my data off your direct marketing database. Thank you very much indeed. So I was quite intrigued, given how cautious I am about giving away my personal details. I was really intrigued to find out just exactly how much of my data was out there, which is why I signed up for Incogni in the first place, and the results were kind of alarming. I wasn't really expecting there to be a lot of my personal data out there, but it's next to impossible to keep a clean digital footprint these days. You do have to grant Incogni the power of attorney to act on your behalf, because you're not making the removal requests personally, they're doing them for you. Otherwise, anybody with your basic information could send a request to Spotify or Netflix and request them to delete your account. But they didn't take long to get to work. They sent out 89 requests. 68 requests are still in progress. 21 have been completed. That's 21 data brokers who, despite my best efforts, still had my personal information registered on their databases, which they sell to anybody. A lot of this data is just used for advertising and marketing, which is annoying. I mean, I've lost track of the number of times I've been browsing for a product on one website and then I go to another website and suddenly all of these ads start popping up, trying to sell me the things that I was just looking at. I mean, that's Google Ad Services for you. It's relatively benign. It's not something that's likely to cost you money unless you click on one of the ads and buy the product. But insurance companies use these data brokers as well. And if you've not been feeling very well and you've gone to a website like WebMD, for example, which millions of people do every day, and they're a prime target for data skimming by these data brokers, that could end up costing you money in the form of increased insurance premiums. And Incogni has already started getting me results. They've sent out 89 requests to data brokers. 21 of the data brokers have already complied and removed my data. And this is, of course, an ongoing process, because 68 of those data brokers have not yet complied with Incogni's demands to remove my data. Of those 68, some of them may not have my data. Not yet, anyway. There's no guarantee that they won't in the future. So Incogni stays on the case for you, constantly checking up to ensure that everybody is complying with the data removal demands. So yeah, I've been using this service for about 3 weeks now. They're already getting results. I'm very happy with it, and also very happy to recommend it to you. If this seems like the sort of thing that you think might be useful, head to incogni.com/jingles, use code JINGLES at the checkout, or just click on the link in the video description, and the first 100 people to take advantage of the code will get 20% off an Incogni subscription. So, yeah, that's the sponsorship.
Excellent. Sounds like an awesome deal.
Yeah, I am actually pretty happy with it. It's amazing how much information is out there about you that you don't necessarily want people to know about, but what can you do?
I can tell you what you can do. I've just watched an advert about
you could do it yourself.
No, you couldn't really, could you?
But 98 different data brokers, I've never even heard of any of them, so I wouldn't know where to
yes,
start
also, you don't
looking.
have the power of a company behind you.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it. The law backs you up. In most countries, we've got the Data Protection Act here, where you can request any information on you, and America has the same thing. But yeah, 98 different companies. I didn't know who any of them were. So quite happy to just let Incogni do it for me. Anyway, welcome, Eddie, back on the couch. And today Eddie is drinking.
Ah, this wonderful liquid. Symbol of the Free West.
Yes, Eddie's driving. I, however, I'm on 5 Seeds Crisp Apple Cider. This is from New Zealand. It's actually pretty nice. I'm not a huge cider fan, but there's this website I use, Sansa.
Yes.
South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. They basically import all kinds of stuff. Not just beers and stuff, but like foodstuffs,
Biltong,
crisps, biltong, all that sort of stuff. So the stuff that if you're from South Africa, New Zealand or Australia and you're living as an expat here in Britain, stuff from home that you miss. It's also the only place in the UK you can get Hunter's Gold cider.
Yes.
When it's in stock, which it usually isn't because it's so good.
You can get it from Amazon, but you'll pay 3 times the price.
Yeah, it's expensive stuff to import. So I thought I'd give this a go, and it's good. But it's not £15 for a 6-pack, dude. So
fair enough.
So yeah. Anyway, so the first thing that we wanted to talk about in this episode, it cannot have escaped your attention that we're suffering a little bit of a political. I never want to talk about religion or politics, but I mean it's the biggest news in the country at the moment. The fact that somebody posted, I forget who he was, a tweet saying that his son had lived through 4 chancellors, 2 monarchs, 2 prime ministers, and he's only 4 months old.
Yeah.
Right. And in a week he will have lived through 3 prime ministers.
Yes.
And he's only 4 months old.
Only 2 more prime ministers till Christmas.
That's right. So without really wanting to get, I'm going to talk about the politics.
But let's not get political.
But let's try to not get political. And for those of you who are perhaps unaware of the exact situation, have you ever heard of Larry the Cat?
Yes, I have.
Right, so Larry the Cat is an official position. He's the chief mouser at number 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister's residence. 10 Downing Street has always had a mouser. He actually has, it's an official position, and it's currently held by Larry the Cat, and he has a spoof Twitter account. And where is it? Larry the Cat posted a tweet a couple of days ago. The King has asked me to become Prime Minister because this nonsense has gone on long enough. That's one of them.
Yep.
But there was another one where he basically summarised absolutely everything that's happened over the last couple of months. So let me see if I can find it. Oh, here's another one. The Chancellor rota for the next 7 days. Friday, Jeremy Hunt. Saturday, Sajid Javid. Sunday, Sam Allardyce. Monday, Mr. Tumble. Tuesday, Skeletor. Wednesday, Inspector Gadget. And Thursday, Larry the Cat.
Nice.
There's another one here. You've got to hand it to Larry the Cat. The amount of rats he's chased out number 10 in the last 2 months is impressive.
That's very on the nose.
That's brutal. There's another one here. Number 10's Larry the Cat has resigned shortly after Liz Truss. I'm now resigning as 10 Downing Street's Cat. I'm taking myself to Battersea Cat's home. I can no longer deal with this shite. But the one I'm looking for, where he basically did this really, really good summary of exactly what has happened over the course of the last couple of months. For anybody, I need to find it. Oh crap. Let me see if I can actually find. It turns out just doing a Twitter search for Larry the Cat gets you everybody who tweets about him. I want his tweets and his tweets alone, because it's a perfect summary of everything that's actually happened in British politics over the last 2.5 months.
Oh, hello, Q.
Oh, speaking of cats, hello, Juicy.
Hello.
Ah, here it is. Right. So, here it is. So, from those asking from around the world how Britain has gotten into this mess, because here's the thing, for the last few years, I think we Brits have been unnecessarily smug about American politics, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah. We've been sitting here looking at the media circus that has surrounded the Trump presidency, thinking, Americans.
That would never happen to us.
We're not feeling quite so smug now. So, for those asking from around the world how Britain has gotten into this mess, Larry the Cat, the chief mouser at number 10 Downing Street, sums it up thus. The Conservative Party has always been obsessed with Europe. This caused divides, making the party hard to manage. Back in 2015, then Prime Minister David Cameron had an idea. He promised a referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union if he won the election. He won the election. The referendum was held. 52% of people in this country voted to leave the economic union. Now, that doesn't mean they won the referendum, because I think you need at least 60%, or possibly 66% of the vote to actually win a referendum. So the referendum wasn't won, but 52% were in favour of Brexit.
52% of those that voted,
Yeah.
still 7% didn't vote.
Anyway, David Cameron then resigned, so he quit as Prime Minister. Theresa May became Prime Minister, saying Brexit means Brexit. It turned out nobody actually knew what Brexit meant. She then called an election, and she lost the parliamentary majority. She couldn't get the Conservative Party to agree on a Brexit deal, so she quit as Prime Minister. Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, promising to get Brexit done. He called a general election and won a majority. The UK then left the European Union in January of 2020. Major Brexit issues remain unresolved, and it has negatively impacted the UK economy. Boris Johnson was forced to resign in disgrace in July this year, following a series of scandals. Liz Truss was selected to replace Boris Johnson by members of the Conservative Party. She announced a raft of unfunded tax cuts. She would have to borrow to pay for these tax cuts in order to grow the economy. The economy collapsed immediately. The pound tanked. The economy is in an utter shambles. Inflation is at the highest rate that it's been in 52 years. It's higher than 10%. People are looking at an extra £500 a month on their mortgages. Thank God I have a 2-year fixed rate. They can't change my mortgage rate. She then sacked her Chancellor and blamed him for it all. Unfortunately, throwing him under the bus didn't work. She then resigned, and now we're looking at a new Prime Minister within a week. For those of you who are thinking, well, don't you have to have an election for a Prime Minister? No. In this country, you elect a party, and the leader of that party becomes the Prime Minister. It's not like you have a presidential election like you do in America, which means that a couple of hundred Conservative MPs and the unelected members of the Conservative Party decide who our next Prime Minister is going to be. And the last time this happened, it took them a month and a half to pick a leader. They're going to get it done in a week this time because this shit has gone on long enough. And of course, old Bojo the Clown, Boris Johnson, who hasn't done a single bit of elected Member of Parliament work since he was ousted as Prime Minister in disgrace less than 2 months ago, has announced, now he's going to come back to the country and start doing some work in order to become the next Prime Minister again. And all of those Conservative MPs who 2 months ago were saying the man is a disgrace and a liability to the party and he has to go, are now saying, oh yes, he's the best choice for Britain. Oh my God. So yeah, that's the situation. Great to be British, isn't it? Yeah, it's a big shit sandwich and we all have to take a bite. And of course they won't call a general election because legally they don't have to.
They don't have to for another 2 years.
Yeah.
So they've got 2 years to try and do some sort of repair work on there.
Yes.
Because if they called it right now, they would be...
Oh, it would be the worst election defeat they have ever had.
They polled and they found out that probably 3 Conservative MPs would keep their seats, and that's it.
That's it. So, so they want to avoid a general election at all costs.
Yes.
And the funny thing is that all of those, because the last time this happened when it was the other side, when it was the Labour Party, was when Gordon Brown took over. Because he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in Tony Blair's government, when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And when Blair quit, Gordon Brown took over. Again, unelected, but he was selected by the Labour Party to be the new leader of the party, which meant he became the new Prime Minister. And all of the Conservative MPs were saying this is a disgrace, it's undemocratic, you can't have a new Prime Minister without an election, and so on and so on. People like Boris Johnson, there were quotes from Boris Johnson saying this is a shambles of our democratic system, even though it isn't, it's completely legal. And of course now Labour are now saying,
on the other foot.
Now the shoe's on the other foot. The Labour Party are now saying we must have a general election. This is simply undemocratic, and it's just politicians being politicians. So yeah, Britain.
That's why we have these looks on our faces.
Yes, you can tell. It's great being part of the democratic process.
Anyway,
So moving on swiftly. So you've got some news today, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last time I was on your show with the lovely Rita, we announced that I was starting a channel, and you mentioned to people that they'd like to suggest a name. I went through most of those suggestions, and there were several that I really liked. One was called Ed Talks, as in a play on TED Talks. And one of them was Eddie's Incompetent Oral,
Which is great.
Which is great. And I thought, you know what, I'll just take both of those and I'll jam them together, because someone already had Ed Talks, so I wouldn't have been able to use that anyway. But I've done Ed Talks, Eddie's Incompetent Oral, and I'd done some things. I'd done some recordings.
How many times did you have to redo them?
This is the thing, I've now redone absolutely everything I did, because I'd get to the end of it and realise how much better at it I've become, and then I didn't like the other stuff. Yeah. That's why it's taken so long. I've not really produced much more stuff.
Hasn't it?
Yeah, I've not really produced much more stuff. But I keep
redone
everything 3 or 4 times. And I thought, you know what? I did a whole bunch of it on Friday night.
Why don't you tell them what you're actually doing?
Yes. On Friday night, I just thought, screw it. Upload it, make it all live. And it's
what? Upload what?
Oh yeah, I haven't said it, have I?
No, you haven't, have you?
Shit, aren't I? Basically...
this is Eddie. He always starts conversations in the
middle. Assuming that everybody knows what we're doing. It's... I've done readings from stuff that's in the public domain. I always make sure things are in the public domain everywhere, because you've got things like Winnie the Pooh that's in the public domain in America but not here, because copyright laws are different. I want to make sure everything's good. So I've got readings, I've got some Shakespeare sonnets, I've got some Shakespeare speeches. I've done the St. Crispin's Day speech, which I love. I've done some poems.
Got any Rudyard Kipling?
I have. I've done If by Rudyard Kipling. And I've also read A Scandal in Bohemia by Arthur Conan Doyle. It's the first of the short stories.
He's the guy who wrote Sherlock.
Yes.
Just in case anybody doesn't know who Arthur Conan... You did some fantasy stuff as well, didn't you?
Yes.
Oh no, I'm thinking Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, that's a Sherlock Holmes story. It's the first Sherlock Holmes story that isn't one of the novels. And I read the whole thing out, and then I didn't like it, so I've redone the whole thing. And I thought, you know what, I'll just make it live, and it's live now. People apparently like the sound of my voice. I get this a lot whenever I appear on this show. People are like, where can I hear him? And all they can get is my old World of Tanks videos.
That's right, yeah.
And, you know...
One of your channel was called The Oncoming Storm.
Yes. And so I've made this so that if people...
That is a Doctor Who reference, by the way.
Yes. Yes, that's what the Daleks call the Doctor. The Oncoming Storm. So, yeah, it's live now. And if you want to...
So there'll be a link in the video description if you want to listen.
Yeah, if you want to listen to it.
You want to listen to Eddie's dulcet tones, lulling you to sleep.
And it'll be a lot more to the point than this, because I'm reading from stuff, not trying to do it myself.
And they're all advert free as well, aren't they?
I don't know if they're going to. I'm trying to make them advert free, but you can't really control adverts till you've got a certain amount of subscribers.
Oh, that's right, yeah. YouTube decides what gets monetised and what doesn't.
Yes, I will not be taking any money for this. I'm not doing this to make money. I will be making nothing.
If you see any adverts on his videos, it's YouTube, not him.
Yeah, and if I get subscribers, I'll then be able to turn adverts off. So
although YouTube still reserve the right to run adverts even on unmonetized videos, it's just
we'll do our best to have no adverts.
It's just YouTube gets the money and he doesn't, but they generally don't. But they do reserve the right to do it because YouTube.
But anyway,
I mean, even this video. I mean, Mingles with Jingles is always there are no. I know I have a sponsorship in Mingles with Jingles, but there are no ad breaks at all. There's no pre-roll ad. There's no mid-roll ad.
Yeah.
I mean, I turn mid-roll ads off on all of my videos anyway because they're incredibly bloody annoying. And YouTube.
And they come in at the worst moment as well.
Yeah. When YouTube. It was a funny old thing because YouTube suddenly started putting like really aggressive advertising in everybody's videos. They turned on mid-roll ads whether you asked them to or not, and it took a bit of an outrage from the creator community for them to give you the option to turn them off by default, and then they reserved the right to put ads on videos even if you turn the monetization off. And it was a funny old thing, but they quadrupled the number of ads that were running on videos at almost exactly the same time. They started heavily pushing YouTube Premium subscription, the advert-free YouTube experience. So, manufacture the problem so they can sell you the solution. It's not like that hasn't been done before. Yes, Ubisoft, we're talking about you. But what you're going to do, and I unfortunately because. I spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos. I go to bed every night and the first thing I do is I pick up the phone and I go to YouTube, and I just don't. There were a lot of channels that I used to watch all the time, Corridor Digital being one of them. They're special effects artists from LA who do some really, really good videos, and their videos just became unwatchable.
Yeah, I can understand that.
It was like, no, I'm sorry. So I bit the bullet and I've got myself YouTube Premium. I understand that a lot of you use ad blockers, and that's fine. I completely understand.
I, on the other hand, was bloody minded about it. I will cut my nose off to spite my face. I am not. I just wander off when the adverts come on and then come back when in the same way that in the 80s when I used to watch TV, you'd go to the toilet when the adverts were on.
Yeah.
I'd go off and I'd do something else when the adverts come in. You knew
that if you were watching commercial TV in the 80s, well, even now, you get a 4-minute ad break, and it was just enough time to go and make a cup of tea or go to the toilet, and you wouldn't miss anything.
Yeah, the kids of today will never know the adrenaline of it's starting, and you pelting across the thing, jumping over the sofa to get back to the TV in time.
Yeah, the TV on demand now, it's
Yeah.
But I completely understand if anybody uses ad blockers to watch YouTube, because YouTube is basically unwatchable unless you run an ad blocker or you have YouTube Premium. But if you have to understand that while I fully support your right to use ad blockers, and I don't blame you at all, the situation is of YouTube's making. If you're going to use ad blockers, I'm going to take sponsorships because I have to make a living.
Yes, yeah.
But I do try to, as I said at the beginning of the video, if I don't, I'm not just going to take the Raid Shadow Legends money and run.
No.
And say, oh yeah, Raid Shadow Legends is a fantastic game, but I clearly don't think it is. Although many of you have said, screw it, Jingles, just take the money, we'll understand. But there's a principle at stake here.
Yeah, you've always been principled. When you thought you'd lose all your business for standing up to wargaming, you stood up to wargaming anyway, despite
with the World of Tanks thing.
Yeah, that's what you do. You've got a principle.
And then later on with World of Warships as well. Yeah, those were some scary times, but thankfully you lot came through for me. Don't think I'm not ungrateful. It is very, very much appreciated. Anyway. And I hope you all enjoyed yesterday's Stray video. You all thought I'd forgotten about that video series, didn't you? You can blame World of Warcraft for that, by the way, or Wrath of the Lich King Classic.
Yes.
We did our first raid as a guild last night.
Excellent. How did it go?
I've got to be honest, I was expecting it to be a bit of a disaster. Because a lot of people in the guild had never played Wrath of the Lich King when it first came out 15 years ago. And so they'd never seen the inside of the first raid instance, Naxxramas. And there are raid guides that you can read that tell you how to do the boss fights and so on, but there's no substitute for actual experience.
Yeah.
And so I would have been happy. I was on the Restoration Shaman, Shinano. She's a shaman healer with a elemental damage dealer off spec. We had 3 healers, because generally if you're going into a raid for the first time, it's safer if you go with 3 healers, 2 tanks and 5 DPS. We're doing the 10-man version, not the 25-man, because we're a small guild. Once you're comfortable with the fights, you can drop it to 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 6 DPS to kill everything faster.
Yeah.
But at first, 3 healers is safer. So I would have been happy if we'd cleared 1 win, if we wiped, adapted our tactics, like on the first boss in the Spider Wing, for example, he's called a Nubrican, he's a massive Crypt Lord. If we'd wiped a couple of times and then eventually gotten him down and then gone to the next boss, Grand Widow Felina, and wiped a couple of times and then gotten her down, and then cleared the way through to the next boss, Makesner, giant spider, and then wiped a couple of times, gotten her down, and then that was it, end of the night. If that had happened, I would have been quite happy.
Yeah.
We cleared the whole raid on the first night, with the exception of the last boss, Kel'Thuzad. We did 14 bosses in 1 night. We had 1 wipe on, there's this boss called Gluth. He's this massive undead dog. And he's a fairly simple fight.
Yeah.
But he brings in a load of these zombies, they're called zombie chow.
Yeah.
There will be a lot of them. And you basically have to crowd control them. Right? You can't kill them. Okay. You can, but if you spend all your time killing the zombie chow, you'll never kill the boss.
Right.
Because they have a shit ton of health.
You need to control them.
You need to crowd control them. So we had 1 hunter, and bless her, she did her best. She was not doing a bad job, but there were just too many of them. And if they hit you, they daze you, so you're slow and you can't get away from them, and so on and so on. So she's trying her best, but there were just too many. We're asking the impossible of her. And of course, all of the uncrowd controlled zombies went straight for the healers, because the healers were the only people that cast the heals on the tanks, so that's generating aggro. So they've got, who are we going to go for? Well, we're getting aggro over there, go for the healers. So we were getting our heals interrupted and slowed, and it just all... So I said, well, I'm a restoration shaman, but I'm also an elemental shaman. I can just swap spec, put my DPS gear on, and then I can drop a Stoneclaw totem. Shamans drop totems that give all kinds of beneficial effects. I can drop this totem and it slows anything that gets near it, and I can chain lightning on a bunch of the zombies to get the aggro, and then they'll go for me, and then they'll get slowed by the totem, and so on and so on.
You're just trying to hold them. You're not trying to kill them.
Not trying to kill them, because the only way you kill them, you have to kill them in this boss fight. It's a great fight. I love it, because every now and then the boss does this thing called I think it's called Devastate, and it reduces everybody to 10% health.
Except the boss himself.
Except the boss himself. So when the Devastate hits, the healers have to spam heal the tank to get the tank back up to 100%. Otherwise, the boss kills them, and then
and then the whole thing
and then
goes.
spam heal all of the rest of the raid, and everybody then turns around and starts nuking down the zombies, because they get reduced to 10% health as well. And suddenly, instead of having 100,000 health, they only have 10,000. And 10,000 is easy. So, and you have to kill the zombies, because then the boss comes out, the big dog Gluth, and he starts eating the zombies. And if he eats a zombie, he gets healed. So you've got to kill them all then.
So
he doesn't heal them.
So he doesn't heal himself.
So he doesn't heal himself. And I switched to elemental, and boss went down like that. So just a minor adjustment in the tactics, and I think we got to Kel'Thuzad, the last boss, the Lich, and we got some stupid, completely avoidable deaths. The fight starts off with dozens of undead in a big ring around you. You've got giant plague abominations, you've got banshees, you've got lots of skeletons. And skeletons are easy to kill, but if they get into the raid, they start doing area of effect damage, and it's so the abominations can be tanked and stunned. The ranged DPS deal with the banshees. Anybody who can deals with the skeletons. And then this goes on until you've almost cleared the whole room of the undead, and then the Lich himself comes into the fight. And the tank's got to grab him, and then you need an off tank, because when the boss gets down to about 40% health, he calls for help from the Lich King, and a couple of portals open up, and these crypt guards come in, and they have to be tanked. You can't kill them. But the longer the fight goes on, there's no enraged timer on it or anything, but more of these crypt guards start coming in. The off tanking 2 of them, that's no problem. Tanking 4 of them, it starts getting a bit tricky. Tanking 6 of them, eventually the off tank is just going to get overwhelmed.
There's only so much.
And then they'll go for the healers, and then everybody dies. But what was doing us was in the first pull, there was an untanked plague abomination that the tanks missed. And the only other person generating aggro on it was the healers. So it went for me and splat. So before the actual boss got into the fight, I was dead. He was down a healer. And then he does this other ability during the actual main part of the fight where he summons like a... There's an area effect that appears around the feet of a person in the raid. And if you stay in it, you die. Not, ooh, that stings a bit, I better move it. No, you just die. It just kills you.
So you see this appear, you run like bugger.
Yeah, so you just move out of it. Nice and simple. But everybody's focusing on the boss and they weren't watching what was happening at their feet. And then 2 people died to this, so you're now down 2 DPS and a healer. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's gone.
So we kept on going just so everybody could learn the mechanics of the fight, and then we have another go. And we did it again. And there's a bit of a bug on Kel'Thuzad. We did a pretty good transition from the first phase with all of the undead to fighting the boss. And then the boss despawned, just disappeared. What? God damn it.
I would be fuming at that. You do everything and then...
We did a perfect transition from phase 1 into phase 2 and the boss despawned. So we ran back to the back of the room, we waited for everything to respawn, we did it again. And then, again, it was people not watching where they were standing and just dying to these void fishers or whatever the hell they're called. We had about 5 attempts and then it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I'm cooking
an old
chicken.
man, I need to sleep.
I need to get my dinner. So we're going again. I mean, you'll be watching this on Monday. We're recording it on Sunday, but we're going again tonight, and we're going to kill Kel'Thuzad.
So by the time they watch this, you'll have killed Kel'Thuzad.
We'll have done it. I'm confident that we'll do it, and it won't take 5 attempts. We've got the tactics down. We know what to do. We know what to not do. We're going to do it. And I was amazed at how well we did, because I can remember like 15 years ago, the first time around.
Yeah.
And I was in a good guild. We got server first boss kills. We were the first guild on the server to clear the AQ 40 dungeon back when 60 was the level cap. And we went into the original Nax Ramus, which was brutally hard, and we managed to clear 1 wing. And then Wrath of the Lich King came out with a sort of less brutally insane difficulty version of the Nax Ramus raid dungeon, and it wasn't as hard, but it wasn't easy. And we were a top raiding guild, and it took us about a month to clear everything and get the first kill on Kel'Thuzad. We weren't the server first kill on Kel'Thuzad, but I think we were the 2nd or 3rd guild on the server to get him down, and it took a month. And then we went in last night. I think it's safe to say that the raid has been nerfed a little.
A smidge, either that. Just you are all expert.
Well, we're amazing, just natural pro raiders.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, let's go with that one.
Yeah,
I think 2 weeks after Wrath of the Lich King Classic came out, I was seeing people with the Undying title, which meant that their raid group had done a full clear of Nax Ramus without a single person dying.
Wow.
2 weeks after... This wasn't 2 weeks after they hit level 80 and started raiding. This was 2 weeks after Wrath of the Lich King came out. So everybody had to take a week to level up to 80.
Yeah.
And then some time to start getting the gear that would let you compete, and then doing it. It was just crazy. I think it's safe to say it's been nerfed a little, but it is a lot of fun.
Except when you did it. With you guys, it was just pure skill.
Yeah, it was skill. Absolute pure skill.
But everybody else gets the nerf version.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We're going to finish off Kel'Thuzad tonight, and... we've basically already, after one night in Nax Ramus, we've got the place on farm status.
Fair enough.
And everybody got some gear. That was the good thing.
Yes.
Everybody got some loot. I got 2 pieces. I got a shield and a ring.
It's all right to be you, isn't it?
Everybody got at least 1 piece of usable gear. In particular, the hunter, Jill Vance, because she was the only person in the raid that used mail armor with agility on it. I mean, I could use mail armor with agility on it, because there are 3 different talent specializations for Shaman. Elemental, which is spellcaster DPS, fire, lightning, all that sort of thing, 16 and bag stuff.
Yeah.
Big Trouble in Little China reference, you're welcome. Restoration, which is a healer, and then enhancement, which is melee DPS. But I'm not enhancement, so I didn't need any of that agility mail armor. So
you'd be a dick if you started bidding on it.
Yeah. So the hunter made off like a bandit. She must have come out of that
Sometimes
raid.
you dip in.
Yeah. She must have come out of that raid with 6 pieces of epic gear. But everybody got at least one item, so it was really, really
Nice
good
when
to
that
see.
happens, isn't it?
And no loot drama either, which is a nightmare when that happens. But when people just get upset about, because we'll go again next week, and then because each boss has like a loot table, and we're doing 10-man, not the 25-man version, because we're a small guild. Each boss has something like 12 items that might drop, but they'll only drop 2. So we'll go again next week, and there'll be different loot, and other people will get stuff, and but everybody did get something. So
You've got something. That's all you can ask for.
yeah,
Isn't
exactly. There's an add-on, by the way, and it came out in the original Wrath of the Lich King like 15 years ago. It's called Gear Score, and I hate it. I appreciate that it has a use. What Gear Score does is it's an add-on that basically displays a number that ranks the effectiveness of your gear. So it looks at the gear that you have, and each of the stats has like a weight to it, and it calculates the weight.
it?
The
It
stat
says
weight.
how powerful
And
it is.
basically, it's an indication of how powerful you are. So, roughly speaking, and people can argue with these numbers all they like, the general idea is that you need a gear score of around 3,000 to start doing heroic dungeons and have a chance of succeeding. Obviously, if you're a great player, you can get away with a lower gear score. So, my shaman has a gear score of 3,577.
So you can start raiding.
Yeah. So this is why I never liked gear score, because people would use gear score as a bar to entry, where they would say, I'm forming a group to do this dungeon. You must have a gear score of 3,200. Why? If you've got a gear score of 3,200 and you're doing a heroic dungeon, you probably don't need any of the stuff that drops in that dungeon, because people are lazy and they just want to blast through the dungeon. They're not interested in the gear. They just want to get the badges that drop from each boss so they can use that to buy stuff at the badge vendor. And they're not interested in getting people in who actually need the gear from the dungeon. So this whole gear score thing would be used as a bar to entry for elitists to refuse people who actually needed the stuff
People
from
actually need
joining
to do
the
the
groups.
thing. Yeah.
But here's the thing, gear score is bullshit. Because, and I showed you this earlier when you arrived before we started recording. So my shaman has this shield, because shamans can use shield, a main hand weapon and shield. And I got the shield that you buy with emblems of heroism, whatever. It's item level 200, and with that shield and everything else that my shaman has, she has a gear score of 3,577. But the shield has critical strike rating on it and not haste rating. And for restoration shamans, haste is way more useful than critical strike rating. So the shield that I got from, I think it was the first boss in the Spiderwing last night in Nax Ramus, an Ubrakan, has exactly the same item level and gear score rating as the shield I was using.
So swapping them over is going to do
swapping them
diddly
over
squat to you.
does not change my gear score. But the one that dropped from Nax Ramus has haste and not crit. And it's 25% better for a restoration shaman than the item that I was using that didn't have haste. So I'm now 25% better by switching that item over, but my gear score hasn't changed.
So the number's basically irrelevant.
More or less irrelevant, because it doesn't take into account, it just takes the value, the base value of the stats
Of
on
the
the
actual-
item.
yeah.
It doesn't care
How?
what your talent specialisation is.
Yeah.
And you can take it to an extreme, because I knew that back in the day when Wrath of the Lich King was current content, like 15 years ago, and it was pissing me off so much that I knew I could do these dungeons on my mage, but I couldn't get into a freaking group for them because my gear score wasn't high enough. So, and there was a couple of items of gear that were kind of bad, but it didn't matter. I could work around it.
Yeah.
Now remember, a mage, a spellcaster. I think I was a frost mage, so I needed intellect, I needed haste, I needed crit, and I needed hit rating as well, because otherwise your spells can miss the targets. And I had a couple of deficiencies in blah blah blah, but I knew I could make it work. But I couldn't get into a group because my gear score wasn't high enough. But there were some quest rewards that were no, it wasn't my mage. It must have been a different. Let's say it was my shaman, for the sake of argument. Well, again, let's say, for example, some of that hunter loot had dropped because my shaman's cloak and boots are kind of bad. Everything else is good, but the cloak and boots are kind of bad. They're not as high level as the rest of her stuff. So a hunter cloak and a pair of hunter boots had dropped that were really, really good for a hunter and really, really good for an enhancement shaman, and I could wear, but which would have been, they would have negatively affected how well I could heal or throw lightning bolts around because they didn't have the right stats.
Yeah.
But I could have put those on and improved my gear score, even though I was making myself worse by equipping them. That's why I despise the add-on.
Yes.
You know, I can actually nerf my effectiveness, but improve my gear score.
That's a really long way of saying, I really hate this thing.
That's right, yeah.
No, they're ruining my game.
I can remember back, because I played every character class, and I had a whole bunch of alts that I didn't raid with, but I would run heroic dungeons with. And I had my holy priest, who was a healer, and I would run heroic dungeons, not because I actually needed the gear from them, but because each boss that you killed dropped a badge, and you could use the badge to buy epic gear, which is better than any of the gear that would drop in the dungeons. And we were doing, I think it was the heroic violet hold, which is a prison. There's a bunch of prisoners in there that break out, and you've got to kill the prisoners, and they're the bosses. And it's always difficult to get a tank. DPS, easy to get. Healers can be difficult to find a healer, but tanks, and everybody else in this dungeon group with me were waiting for a tank, and they clearly didn't need any of the loot that dropped in this place. They were the same as me. They were just looking for badges from the boss kills. And then we got this Death Knight tank joined the group, and we'd waited 20 minutes of sitting around Dalaran waiting to get a tank. And this tank's gear score was bad. Right, they were very clearly a brand new level 80 character
who hadn't got the stuff yet,
and who hadn't got a single dungeon loot drop yet. But I had a quick inspect, and she'd spent money on buying the best stuff that you could spend money on to make her a better tank, and everything that she had it had gems in the right slots. Yeah, it had enchants.
So they'd done their work, just hadn't had the chance to get the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
She'd done her homework, she knew what she needed to do.
She put the effort in to be the best possible tank she could do without ever having done a heroic dungeon and gotten heroic dungeon loot. And the instant she joined and the 3 DPS saw her shitty gear score, they initiated a vote to kick her from the group and wait another 20 minutes to try to find a slightly better tank. And I was not having any of that shit. I told them, if you kick that tank, you're going to be looking for another healer as well. And they reluctantly agreed to let the tank... They reluctantly agreed to allow the tank the privilege of tanking the dungeon for us. Yeah. And you know what? It was hard. Keeping the tank up was hard. But I outgeared the dungeon. It wasn't impossible. I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
And she was amazing. She's one of the best tanks. She had to struggle because the DPS were trying to make a point and doing as much damage as fast as they could to prove that the tank couldn't hold aggro. And that's fine. I just let them die.
Fair enough.
they learned or they died, and it took about instead of clearing the whole place in 17 minutes, it took us 20.
Yeah.
And the tank got some usable loot and was so grateful. And honestly, I mean, just people are so shit.
Yeah.
They really can be such shits. Thankfully, I was the healer, so I was in a position to put my foot down and do something about it. Because nobody wants to upset a stroppy healer.
But if you do, you don't get healed, as they found out.
Yeah, you pull aggro off the tank. Oh, okay, if the tank can't hold threat, and you pull aggro and die, that ain't the tank's fault. That's your fault. You know how much fucking aggro you're generating. Chill the hell out.
Yeah.
Right? And if you do it deliberately, and I knew they were, I will not heal you. You will learn the hard way to Let the tank do things at their own pace. So yeah, I tell that story every couple of years or so.
Yes, that's not the first time I've heard it.
Oh right.
But no, that's fine. I'm pretty sure they haven't. That's why I let you go on with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure some of you probably have. If you've been sticking around watching Mingles or Jingles for long enough.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I knew what was coming there, but
that was one of my prouder moments as a healer.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you spend 20 minutes in a queue waiting for a tank to turn up, and then you reject the first tank that turns up. I mean, how are you going to shorten the tank waiting time if you're not giving the tanks the opportunity to gear up?
If it takes 17 minutes to get through, and you'd waited 20 minutes already, you could literally, by the time another one comes along, you could have already done it with that one.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
That's just how selfish and greedy certain. I'll tell you what though, I have noticed something. I mean, yeah, you get dicks all the time in every walk of life, and it doesn't matter what game you play, there are going to be arseholes. But I have noticed, and if I can remember, I'll stick the because I did record it because it was amazing. They came a long way from some of the really kind of not very friendly quest design in the original classic vanilla World of Warcraft. They improved some of the way some of the quests work in the Burning Crusade, the first expansion, and then when Rasha the Itch King came out, they improved some of the quests even further. But there were still a couple of real stinkers that were like, how the hell did somebody write this quest and then send it up to their supervisor, and everybody involved said, yeah,
signed off on it.
That's how we want this quest to work. So there are two in particular. There's one. Well, let's talk about the one in Winterguard Keep Dungeon.
Okay.
Right. So, Winterguard Keep is basically at the foot of the Naxxramas necropolis, and they're constantly fighting off hordes of undead. And the town of Winterguard has been overrun by the undead, and the mayor has become a ghoul. But they've got the mayor in the dungeon, and there's an Argent Crusade Inquisitor interrogating him. So you have to go down and witness the interrogation. The interrogation takes about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Right, of you just standing there, listening to the Inquisitor questioning the ghoul, and then he gets the information you need, and you're told to go and report with that information to the commander of the fort. It takes 3 minutes from you going into the dungeon and just clicking on the Inquisitor and saying, "Hi, I've been told to come to you. You need to get some information from Mayor Godfrey the Ghoul." And he then interrogates the mayor, and it takes 3 minutes. And you cannot do it as a group. Normally, if you've got a quest that just involves like killing things and not looting stuff from the things that you've killed, get a group to do it. Because if there's 5 of you who need to kill 10 skeletons, right. If you're in an area where there are 10 skeletons, you need to kill 10 skeletons, and there are 5 people trying to kill those 10 skeletons.
All 5 of them will get the 10 kills.
All 5 of them get the 10 kills like that. So if you group up, if you don't group up, you've got 5 people trying to get 10 kills on 10 skeletons, and they're competing against each other, and it will take all of you 3 times as long. So you group up, and you get the quest done faster. So if 5 of you group up and go down to the dungeon and speak to the Inquisitor, all 5 of you stand around 3 minutes, and all 5 of you get the quest done. But you cannot do this quest as a group. So there was a line of players, 15 players long, coming out the dungeon and going up the stairs. Every single person had to wait 3 minutes for the person ahead of them. So if you were at the back of that queue, you were there for an hour waiting to get this quest done. And everybody queued.
That's pretty cool.
Nobody ran to the front of the line and sat there clicking on the Inquisitor, trying to ninja the quest and get it done ahead of everybody who'd been waiting half an hour.
Yeah.
Everybody queued up.
Nobody Phil and Hollied.
No. One person did, because there's always going to be an arsehole.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you knew who it was, because the Inquisitor turns around and addresses that person by name. It was very well, Eddie, we will conduct the investigation. Thinking, Eddie isn't at the front of the queue. And there's Eddie in the middle of the queue going, what, wasn't me?
Yeah.
So, right, Add Eddie to the ignore list so he never gets into a group with any of us in future. Good luck getting groups of heroic dungeons when you hit level 80 because you wanted to take a 20-minute shortcut here. So, aside from that one person, everybody queued. And I've noticed on the Wrath of the Lich King Classic server, generally speaking, people are really good. You get the occasional arsehole, like Eddie.
Thanks, man. I hope your next shit's a hedgehog.
But generally speaking, and it was the same with the other quest, where people basically had to stand in line and wait. Everybody stood in line and waited. Nobody was an arsehole, with the odd exception, like Eddie. Anyway.
Love you too, man.
So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with Wrath of the Lich King Classic. It's not just fun, I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia in there because...
there's a lot.
I mean, you remember when we queued up to get
Yes,
back
I did. Yes, I did.
Because I was still in the Navy at the time, and I didn't take summer leave.
No.
I said, I'll work summer duties so I can take my 4 weeks summer leave around the launch of the Wrath of the Lich King. And then we went to the Asda supermarket where we Googled and found out who had them in stock and was going to be selling them. We thought we won't go to Game because there'll be a queue a mile long.
No, we started off going to Tesco.
To the Tesco supermarket.
Yeah, we ended up back at Asda afterwards, and that was no good either.
Yeah, because we turned up half an hour before. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you talked about this literally a couple of weeks ago. I wouldn't go over whole ground.
I've rehashed this one too many times. But basically, we failed.
Through no fault of
our own, and we ended up going to the Morrisons in Gosport first thing in the morning where they had a couple of copies, so I was able to start playing, not immediately.
And what I loved about that is this was a time when I wasn't a great big fat bloke, I was only a slightly fat bloke, and you lent me one of your t-shirts, and I think it said, "Don't you wish your boyfriend cast dots like me?" And people hanging around waiting for it went, and I knew enough of the game through talking to you to be able to blag that I was a player and I was accepted into this community.
You were accepted as a fellow nerd.
Because of the t-shirt I was wearing and the fact that I could just about follow what they were talking about, and I knew just enough to
be able to
pass as a player, But yes, you dressed me up to go and get a video game.
Back when you could actually fit into one of my t-shirts.
Back in the day.
I know how
you're about the same size as you were then. That's the thing.
Yeah, I'm about the same size as you were back then.
Yeah, only you're about a foot shorter.
Well, no, I'm about a foot, really.
Yeah, I think of you as a hobbit.
Okay, fair enough. On that bombshell, I think that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Yeah. It's been great to have you back.
I know, I'm awesome.
He is. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.